So remember, you have to know whether you're looking at a sine, cos or tan graph. You then need to decide on your amplitude, you need to decide on your period, and you need to decide if there's been any shifts. So this question is quite good in that it tells us that it's a sine graph. So we already know that that is the shape that we're looking at. So remember, a sine graph would start at 0, it would go up, come back down, and then it would go back up, and it would look like that. Okay, so get rid of that. Looking at what we actually have, it is clear to see that it's a sine graph, but it's not starting at 0, 0. There is a gap here. So we can see that there is going to be some form of shift here. So that means that we can't actually take your amplitude straight from the y-axis. Now we couldn't anyway, because we've got a 5 here and a -3 here. Now remember, if that, say, went up to 2 and down to -2, your amplitude would be 2. If it went up to 10 and down to -10, your amplitude would be 10. We can't do that in this case. So what we need to look for is the gap between this new starting and finishing point and what we actually have. Okay, so if we're considering 5 down to -3, the gap between 5 and -3 is 8. So there's 8 units of a difference between that. Now what we have to do is split that in half. So when we do that, we've got 4 bits up here, and then we've got 4 down here. So what we are saying is the gap from here to here is 4, and the gap from here right the way down to -3 is also 4. So when you think about what this point must be on your y-axis, that must be the point 1. So your sine graph has been shifted up by 1. So if we start thinking about putting this into the formula or into our equation, we're going to have y equals something sine something x plus something else. Okay, and we're going to find the p, q's and r's. So your amplitude must be 4, because remember, your amplitude has to be the same either side of your starting point. So in this case, your starting point is 1, 4 either side, so it must be a 4 sine something x graph. Now remember that that's something, so this part in here is how many times it repeats itself between 0 and 360. So I've already said that this pi over 2, remember pi is 180, so pi over 2 must be equal to 90. And our period is how many times it's going to repeat itself between 0 and 360. So if it's repeating itself once up to 90, it must then repeat itself 4 times up to 360, because 4 90s would fit into 360. Final thing we need to consider is the shift. So we've already said that the gap from our 0 up is a gap of 1. Another way of thinking about it is that we are saying the amplitude is 4. So if the amplitude was 4, it would mean that the graph would go like that. It would go up to 4 and down to -4. But it doesn't. It goes up to 5 and down to -3. So everything in that graph has been shifted up by 1. So this graph is +1. So the value of P is equal to 4. The value of Q is equal to 4 as well. And R is equal to 1.